Hey guys, welcome back to another very exciting tutorial here at the Photoshop Training Channel. My name is Jesus Ramirez and you can find me on Twitter at JRFromPTC. In this tutorial, we're going to be talking about curves and how you can use them to color correct your images. As you can imagine, there's a lot of different ways to do color correction, but the curves adjustment layer offers a lot of control and flexibility, which is why it's my go-to tool for color correction. I'll also show you how you can use curves for color matching for when you're compositing images together. If you want to follow along, feel free to download the tutorial files from my website, photoshoptrainingchannel.com. Anyway guys, let's get started. We're going to start out this tutorial by looking at this image here, which is an image of a statue. But we're just going to look at the statue and not worry about the background so we can better understand how curves work. Now, before we start working in curves, I want to talk a little bit about how color works in Photoshop. That way you can better understand how curves affect your image. Now this is a very complex subject, but I'm going to try my best to simplify it for you so you can understand what's going on with curves when we're actually moving the different parameters around. So this is the statue image that we were looking at before, and what I'm going to try to do now is show you how every single image in Photoshop, or any screen actually that you use, is composed of only 3 different colors: red, green, and blue. I'm going to open up this folder here and you'll see that I'm only working with 3 layers. I'm working with this layer that has red, this one that has green, and this one that has blue, and that makes up our image here. These layers are using the screen blend mode, which means that colors are being added to each other to create a different color. So if I click on the red layer here and move it to the right, you'll see that it's just a layer with red. Click on the blue, move it to the left. So here we have it, red, green, and blue. So this is how all the images in Photoshop are created, by combining 3 different colors to get all the others. This is a gradient and it has pretty much every color that you can display on screen, but you'll also notice that it's just red, green, and blue. So all the colors that you see on your computer can be created by simply using red, green, and blue. If we add an equal amount of all 3 colors, then we get white, and a lack of all colors equals black. So every time you see white on your computer monitor, then what you're really seeing is all 3 colors in a balanced amount. Now you can see all of this without having to create this graphics. If you have any image in Photoshop, you can click on the channels panel and you'll see that there's a red channel, a green channel, and a blue channel. So this is what Photoshop is doing behind the scenes with every single image. If you're working with luminance values, and actually I have the info panel open, so take a look at the RGB numbers here. White is 255 all across the board. You'll see that there. As I keep scrolling down, you'll see the numbers are always equal to each other. The red channel, the green channel, and the blue channel always have the same numbers, and that's how you create luminance with RGB. So if you're working on an image and it has a color cast on the light areas, that means that there's more of a single color on that image. For example, if you're working on an image and it has a red color cast, that means that the balance is not right. So there's more red than green or blue. So I'm going to come back into the gradient here, and if you'll notice that with colors, the RGB is all over the place. So they're not a balance. And again, I'm looking at this section right here. So when I hover, you'll see that the colors are balanced. To be able to color correct images in Photoshop, you need to be familiar with the color wheel and the opposite color. So for example, red, the opposite is cyan. Green, the opposite is magenta. And blue, the opposite is yellow. And if you've noticed, that is the same thing as C, M, Y, and K being black, the other color mode used for printing. So the reason that your color printing uses cyan, magenta, and yellow is because they control how much red, green, and blue light bounces off your paper, since we cannot control those colors directly with paper and ink. So that means that RGB is an additive color mode and CMYK is a subtractive color mode. So if you're working with an image and the image has too much red, you want to give it more cyan to balance the image and make it look better. Same thing with yellow. If it's got too much yellow, you want to add blue, and so on. So these are the things you need to keep in mind when working with curves and doing color correction, so you have a better understanding of what you're doing. Now, to be completely frank with you, you don't really need to remember all of this, but it's a good idea to have an understanding of how it works so you can fix more complicated problems. And quickly, just to show you, I have this CMYK image here that I created. This time I'm using multiply on these individual layers here to create that same image. So it's same idea, but I'm using this cyan, magenta, yellow, and black to create the image. And by the way, I'm going to have these files available for download so you can play around with them and maybe you can understand how they work a little bit better if you're confused. So feel free to go to my website, photoshoptrainingchannel.com, look for this tutorial, and download the zip file if you like to. Now, with that basic knowledge of how color works in Photoshop, now let's go into an image and let's try to color correct this image using curves, which is what this tutorial is about. So we spent the last 7 or 8 minutes really quickly going over how color works in Photoshop. So now with that basic understanding, we can come and fix this image here using curves. So I'm going to create a curves adjustment layer to work non-destructively. So now, just by looking at the image, you can probably tell what the problem is. We have too much red. So if we come back into our color wheel, you'll see that the opposite of red is cyan. So the way to fix this image is by removing the red. We can come into the RGB drop down here in the curves panel, click on red, and the way this works is a lot like a light switch. If you drag the curve up, you increase the light in the image, in this case the red. If you bring it down, you reduce the light, making it darker in the opposite color, in this case cyan. And notice that by making that darker, I'm already fixing the image. So let's do that again. I'm just going to bring that in, and the image is already much better. If I shut off the visibility, you can see how I'm fixing the image. And I can also maybe bring this in since there's no color information there. So obviously I'm eyeballing it here, and you can obviously go into the different channels too if you want and make different adjustments to make the image look better, or you can use the RGB all channels at once and adjust the image as you see fit. Now, this is obviously a vast improvement, but it's still not better. There's still a lot of problems here in the red channel that we could fix, and obviously this takes some time. So essentially what I'm doing is I'm removing the red by adding cyan. So you can see how this works. And obviously the result is much better. Now, if you don't want to eyeball it, there's another way of doing it. And I'm going to use this image here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create another curves adjustment layer, and this time I'm going to use the eyedroppers here. The eyedropper here, the one with black inside, sets the darkest colors of the image, the black point. This one here sets the grays, which is the midpoint, and this one here sets the white, which is the white point. So you have to find the lightest place in the image and then click on it with this eyedropper. Then you have to find the darkest, and obviously I'm eyeballing it here, and then click here to set the darkest point of the image, and do the same thing with gray and something like that. So this is how it looks, and obviously I just eyeballed it, and it looks a lot better, but it's still not good. So I'm just going to go ahead and delete that, and I'm going to create a new curves adjustment layer. But what I'm going to do this time, I'm going to use Photoshop to tell me what the darkest and lightest points are. I'm going to click on the background layer, which is the layer with the truck, and then I'm going to go into image, adjustments, threshold. And if I move the threshold to the left, everything turns white. If I then move it to the right, you'll see some black sections appear. And this is going to be the darkest points of the image, my blacks. If I hold shift, you'll notice that I get a little icon on top of the eyedropper there. I'll let that go so you can see it go away. I'm going to hold shift again, and it brings up that little icon again. And if I click on a dark part, like on a blob here, that's going to be one of the darkest points in my image. So I'm just going to click on it, and that is going to leave that little guy there telling me that that's the darkest point of my image. Now I'm doing this because I probably won't remember where it is, and I don't want to eyeball it later. If you can remember, you can just click on preview, and remember it's that part of the truck there right above the wheel. So if you can remember, that's fine. You don't have to do this. I probably won't remember, so I'm just going to click on there. The next thing I'll do is I'll try to find the brightest point of the image, and I'm going to go all the way to the right, and it's going to turn everything black. And if I start moving it to the left, I start getting some bright points here, and then I can select the one for the brightest point of my image. So I can click on preview, and the reason I'm clicking preview is because I really wouldn't want to select this area here, because this is a specular highlight, so it blows out all the detail of my image. So I want the brightest point with detail. So let me bring that in. Just let me click on preview again and bring in more. It'll probably be here. These are white lines painted on the ground here, so this will probably be it. This will probably be my white point. So I'm going to hold shift again and click on that. So I got my black point and my white point, and then I'm just going to press cancel, because if I press OK, it'll turn my image into this, and I don't want that. I'm just going to press cancel. I'm going to go back into my curves adjustment layer and double click on the icon here to bring up the properties panel. I'm going to click on my black point eyedropper, and I'm going to click on this area here to set my darkest point. Then I'm going to do the same thing for the white point. Click on the white point and click here. And look how much better my image looks. Now I'm going to click on the midtone. This is a gray. This will be the grays in my image, and there's no real way of finding out what the gray tones are in the image. So you can kind of click around and play around until you find something that you like. Just look at something that you think would be gray and just click on it. So maybe like the roof here, or maybe even the truck here. And I think the roof here looks pretty good. It makes everything look pretty good. So this is a before and after, just using that technique. Now, obviously I could have started with this and I didn't need to explain to you any of the colors and RGBs and different channels and all that stuff works, but the reason I did that is so you understand what's happening. If I open up my reds in the curves, you'll see that what we're doing here is adding red to remove some of that cyan that's on this image. So you can actually come in here and make more adjustments if need be, because now you know that if there's still a little too much cyan, you can just move this up, or if there's too much red, you can move it down. So you can even come and make further adjustments if need be. Same thing with green. Notice that now we're pushing down the greens, adding more magenta, because in the original image we had too much green. Now, if you don't remember what the opposite of each color is, you can just come into image, mode, and look at here, RGB. Right below the R you have the C for cyan, right below the G you have the M for magenta, right below B you have the Y for yellow, K is black. So we had too much green on the original image, and we added magenta to reduce the green. And again, you can come in here and make more adjustments if need be, but I think we did a pretty good job that we don't need to make any further adjustments. And we have the blue, and we can add more blue if we want to, or maybe even bring it down. But you know, like I said, I think we did a pretty good job, so I'll just leave that where it is. Now, another thing you can do with curves is match the color cast of an image to do a composition. So I have a sky here, and I want to incorporate this jet into the sky. And there's many things I can do to match the colors of this jet to match the background. But one of the things we can do is we can take advantage of curves. So I'm going to create a new curves adjustment layer, and I'm going to click on this icon here, which is going to clip it onto the jet. Now, another way of doing that is by holding Alt or Option on the Mac in between the two layers, and it creates a clip out of it. What this is going to do is it's going to make it so that this curves adjustment layer only affects the jet, not the background, because the background already has the colors that we want, and we're trying to match those colors onto the jet. So I'm going to click on this icon here, which is going to give me the options for curves, and I want to go into the auto options, and I'm going to click on find dark and light colors. I'm going to click on that, and it's going to give me access to the shadows, midtones, and highlights, and we only really need to worry about the shadows and highlights for this. So I'm going to click on shadows, and it's going to bring up this color picker, and I gotta find the darkest point in the image. And you can eyeball it if you want, or you can do the threshold, but you know, for something like this you probably can just eyeball it. So I'm gonna click on a dark point, and there's not that many blacks, it's only these dark reds, so I'm just gonna click on here. Actually, this didn't work, and I'm actually kind of glad it didn't, because you might have this problem. So the reason this is not working is because when I click on here, it's selecting white. The reason it's selecting white is because if you notice here, I have my layer mask selected, and my layer mask only contains white. So obviously when I click on the color picker, it's gonna select white. That's the only color inside the layer mask. So I'm just gonna cancel out of these, and I'm gonna select the actual curves icon here, and I had the layer mask selected before. So I'm gonna click on here and click on auto options again, find dark and light colors, and this time if I click on a dark color, it's gonna make some changes in here. I'll click around just so you can see how this works. So I'm gonna actually, you know what, I kind of like, no, this is better. Yeah, this is better here. So I'm gonna select just this dark color here, press OK, and for the highlights, I just don't want to select white, because white here is just what I was talking about earlier. The reason this is white is because it was blown out by the sun. So I want something more like yellow, like here. And this is okay. And another thing you can do is, if you select the color and you're not happy with it, you can move it around here and see how it affects your image. So actually I clicked over here and I kind of like that better. Maybe I can move it to the right just to brighten it up a little bit. But you know, something like that should work, and that's probably okay. Actually the shadows might be a little too dark, so I'm going to click on a different color. So maybe one of these colors here. So I'm using the colors in the image to match the shadows and highlights of the jet, which is what I'm trying to bring in. So I'm going to press OK. And it's going to ask if you want to save the new target colors as default. You probably don't want to do that, so just click on no. And if you come into the red channel, we can actually make further adjustments to further enhance the image. So if I click and drag this up, it's going to add more red. And if you notice, there's a lot of red in this image. So as I'm dragging it up, it's actually matching it pretty good. I'm actually trying to match this color here with this cloud, and that's about the same color, so I'll leave it there. If I come into the blue channel, I can increase the yellows by bringing it down. And actually I'm going to bring it down pretty much all the way, since there's no blue in this image, so there's no real reason for this line to be all the way up here. If we can bring it down and have a lot of yellow, which will again match the image pretty good. And I don't want to have too much actually, because it's not looking right. So I'm actually eyeballing it here, but this looks, I'm looking at this area here. If it's too high, it looks white, but it wouldn't look white in the real world. It will look pretty yellow, so something like that. And green, if we bring it all the way up, that's too much green. If we bring it all the way down, that's too much magenta. So we have to find a pretty good balance, and I think where we had it was okay. Maybe bring it down just a little bit to add a little magenta, which will sort of make it look a little more orange, like so, something like that. And as you can see, the before after is just incredible. It's night and day. And all we really did is use the highlights and shadows of the original image and match those onto the plane by using a curves adjustment layer in a non-destructive way. Now, this really has nothing to do with color correction, but a few things you can do to make this image look better is you can add a layer, clip it to the plane. I'm only trying to affect the plane here, and I'm gonna click on my brush tool. I'm gonna select a soft brush, and I'm gonna get a pretty big brush, something that covers a large portion of the plane, something like this. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna paint with yellow. And actually, a way of getting yellow is, you know, obviously you can select that yellow there, and that's probably good enough. But if you really want to get a yellow, remember that yellow is the absence of blue. So we can have 255 here, 255 here in our RGB channels, and no blue, which will give us yellow. And the same thing for cyan. If you want cyan, you leave this at 0 and you add 255 here, which gives us cyan. If you want magenta, then you type in 255 here, 0 here, and that gives us magenta, because the absence of these colors give you the opposite color. So for yellow, once again, that is oh, by the way, if you have 255 all the way through, obviously it gives you white. But if you want yellow, just have no blue, and you have yellow. Anyway, so with yellow, I'm going to paint on this empty layer that is clipped to the plane, and I'm just going to paint on this side like so. I'm going to double click on it, and I'm going to bring in the blend if options, and for the underlying layer, I'm going to select the darks, because I don't want the darks to be affected by that yellow. But notice that there's a sharp edge. If I hold Alt Option on a Mac, it splits the triangle and I get a smoother transition. And I get this nice yellow highlight on the side of the plane. Like so. And if it's too strong, you can bring the opacity down, but I think that for this, it's probably okay all the way through. Maybe just a little, maybe like 90% or something. Again, this is not really part of color correction, but I think it helps sell the image. And another thing you can do is add yet another layer, fill it with black. I'm going to press D to get the default colors, black and white. Fill the layer with black. Alt backspace, Option backspace on the Mac to fill with the foreground color, and then do a lens flare by going into Filter, Render, Lens Flare, and maybe bring this down a little bit, or actually no, bring it up, like right there. And I'm using the 105mm prime filter at 100% brightness. Press OK. I can set that to screen and go into Image, Adjustments, Hue Saturation. I'm going to click on Colorize, and I'm going to make it yellow, so it's sort of like the yellow sun there. Press OK, and now we have a brighter image that sort of puts everything together. So now it really looks like this plane is really flying on the sunset, and this is the original image, and again, all this is non-destructive. If you still feel like you need to make more adjustments, then you can always come back into the RGB channels and make adjustments, or you can make global adjustments by staying in the RGB. And that's it for this tutorial. I hope you enjoyed it and that you learned something new. If you have any questions about curves, color correction, or anything else, feel free to leave a comment down below. Also, if you like this tutorial, click the like button and share it with a friend. If you're not part of my free newsletter yet, then head over to my website and subscribe. Simply enter your email address in the box, and you'll start receiving email notifications whenever I publish a new tutorial, and you'll also get access to my subscriber-only tutorials. Thank you for watching, and I'll talk to you again very soon.